Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to Life on the Wrist. Hope you guys are doing well today. There's no doubt in my mind that vintage chronographs are some of the hottest watches on the market. And what we're going to be looking at today is this LeJour Chronograph Reference 7000 with a day-to-day complication that I think is a really interesting watch from the 1970s, 1980s. One of the things that you probably notice about this watch is it has a really interesting black PVD finish to it, something that you don't really see a lot in modern watches. So what we're going to be doing is giving you we're going to flip perspectives so you can see this watch in the metal, give you some history about LeJour, which is a pretty interesting brand with its relationships with Heuer, and then go into this specific watch to give you some more details about it. This watch is available on our watch store if you are interested in looking at it. We have some more pictures there, so be sure to check those out. But what we want to do is give you an in-the-metal look at this specific LeJour, because I think that this watch is an interesting watch for its history, but also the fact that it is a blacked out PVD finish chronograph from the 1980s. Super cool. Not something you're gonna see in everyone's collection. So without further ado, let me flip perspectives so you can take a look at this LeJour chronograph. All right, so we are taking a look at this really incredible LeJour chronograph with a date complication on it from the 1980s. This is a really awesome chronograph, and I think the biggest thing that stands out is this PVD finish to it. It gives it a really nice kind of dark look to it, and is an absolutely beautiful watch to really wear on your wrist. I'm gonna first go over a little bit of history on LeJour as a brand, give you some information about them. They are maybe less well known as some of the other watch manufacturers out there, but still have a very interesting history to them. I'll give you some information about them. I'll also talk a little bit about this watch and why it's actually fairly significant, sort of where it comes from, and other watches that look very similar to it. So LeJour is a brand that was founded in the 1960s. A French watch company that was founded in the 1960s, that's well known for having selling agreements with a lot of brands. One of the biggest brands that they had a selling agreement with was Heuer, and they were the US distributor for companies like Yema. And what's really interesting about these arrangements was this was basically an arrangement between LeJour and Heuer, where Heuer would sell watches to LeJour. They would manufacture watches for LeJour. So you could say that the movement inside of this watch, as well as this case, were Heuer owned, sold to LeJour, who produced these pieces and then distributed these watches to different countries, one of them being the United States. And so LeJour distributed a ton of watches. Interestingly enough, this 7000 is a really good example of this. This watch actually has the same case as the Heuer Pasadena, as well as the Porsche Design watch that was worn by Pete Maverick Mitchell, who's played by Tom Cruise in Top Gun. Very similar watch, same case, same dial layout, same movement, and so it's a really good example of how Heuer really had a lot of different arrangements with companies in order to sell these specific watches. LeJour sort of was almost like a play for the quartz crisis, where brands were trying to find ways that they could innovate and perhaps make a little bit of make some profits in other sectors instead of just the one that they were kind of looking at on their own. So a lot of the times these are referred to as, LeJour chronographs are referred to as poor man Heuers, which I think is a little bit short-sighted. I think LeJour has its own sort of charm and has some pretty interesting pieces out there. This reference 7000 being one of them. But what was interesting is that this was sort of a time where Heuer was really trying to sell more automatic chronographs. They were trying to make them a little bit more mainstream, and I think this is a really good example of it. So onto this specific piece. This is a LeJour chronograph reference 7000. You can see on the case back of this watch, you can see the 7000 written right there. And this is a 41 millimeter stainless steel cased watch that has a chronograph and a day and a date complication. It's a really beautiful piece when you sort of take a look at it. Really nice black dial with sort of patinaed hour markers there. They are applied, if you can kind of see on the profile of this watch. And then it has that really really obvious chronograph hand in orange that stands out quite nicely. And then you have the day and the date complication at 3 o'clock there. The watch itself has a black PVD finish to it. You can see it is showing some of its age. You can see around the bezel, some of it is coming off, but it doesn't take too much away from the aesthetics of this watch. I think you still get the same idea. You will notice that on the crown and the chronograph pushers that a lot of the finishing has come off a little bit there. And so if I turn this watch over, you can see that some of it is coming off. It's normal wear for PVD of this era. It's very, very sensitive to scratching off, but also just wiping off, which is pretty incredible. And so, but it still has a really nice sort of black finishing to it. When you turn the watch over, you can see some markings on the case back, but overall the watch is in really great condition. This watch, we can talk about movements here. This is running on the LeJour 7750, which is basically one of the workhorse automatic movements that was released during this time, used during this time. And obviously has the day and the date complication to it. The chronograph is really smooth, actually. Interestingly, it's an automatic movement, and you can really feel when the movement is when the rotor is spinning. And so I can quickly start the chronograph for you guys here. You can kind of get an idea of how it's running here. I think it looks really beautiful. So we can stop it here. Really great chronograph. And a lot of the times, a lot of people think 41 millimeters is quite large. I have fairly small wrists, and if you put this on the wrist, I'm sorry, I'm actually wearing a watch on my left wrist, so I'm gonna put this on my right wrist. But if you put this on your wrist, it actually fits fairly nicely. You can see it is a little bit thicker. That's just the movement that we're looking at, that we're working with here, but fits really nicely on a relatively small wrist. Just as for comparison, you can see I'm wearing an Omega chrono stop on this wrist, and if you sort of compare it, you can see 34 millimeters and 41 millimeters definitely looks different, but still fits quite nicely. This watch comes on a D model racing strap with these red, it's black and then it has these red accents. I think it goes nicely with the orange chronograph hand, which obviously gives it a really nice feel. I think something that's really cool about this strap too is this piece here, where you typically put the end of your strap underneath, is actually caught, which I think is quite a nice design element here. It allows for this thing to not come all the way down here and keeps it quite intact. I thought that was a really interesting touch for this strap. As far as chronographs go, this is a really fun chronograph to add to your collection. Black PVD finishing is something that you don't see very often. I know things that can come to mind are like the Speedmaster Dark Side of the Moon, where you have a blacked out watch, but a lot of the times you have to look towards the vintage sector of things to find PVD finishes on watches. There are probably some modern ones. If you know of some, put them in the comments. I think everyone would love to see those watches. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting chronograph to add to your collection. Also kind of has a really interesting tie to the history of brands like Heuer and also just the quartz crisis in general. So I encourage you to check this watch out. We will have this on our website, on our watch store. So if you want to check out some more pictures of this watch, be sure to head over there. We'll also have a full article in our editorial section of our website where we go into the history of LeJour as well as this watch. So you can check that out. If you want some more information about this, let me know in the comments what you think about this watch. I think it's absolutely, I'm a huge chronograph person. This Memo Sale was my first vintage watch that I ever purchased, and it was because it had a chronograph function to it. It does have a yaw timer complication, but chronographs are really my thing. As you can tell, this Omega Chrono Stop also has is a chronograph. This is also available on our store if you are interested. But chronographs are definitely my thing, and so it's an interesting thing to add to a chronograph collection, or really any vintage watch collection, for the overall aesthetics and just pure interestingness of this really cool watch. So be sure to head over to our website if you are interested. I'll put a link in the description of this video if you would like to check out this LeJour on our website. And with this said, guys, let me flip perspective so we can close out this video. I hope you guys enjoyed looking at that LeJour chronograph. It's a very interesting piece. I absolutely love it. I think it fits really nicely on any wrist. Like I said, I have smaller wrists, but it really does fit me really nicely. And is an interesting part of the history of LeJour, the history of Heuer, and also just an interesting kind of part of vintage chronographs that maybe you haven't taken a look at in your vintage watch journey or your watch journey in general. So I hope you guys enjoyed taking a look at this. Like I said, I will put a link in the description to this specific watch, which is available on our store if you want to check that out. There are more pictures up there so you can see that. Also, head over to our editorial page where you can read a full article about this watch and the history of LeJour. If you don't know, we create editorial posts for every single one of our videos that we do on our YouTube channel, so you should head over to lifeonthewrist.com if you want to check those out. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you like these types of videos. We create videos about watches, everything from modern to vintage, learning about vintage watches to watch export results. You name it, we're probably covering it. So be sure to hit that subscribe button if you like these types of videos. Also, let me know in the comment section below what you think about this LeJour chronograph. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button for us, it really does help us out with our analytics for our channel. Share this video with a friend who might be interested in this LeJour chronograph. And with that said, guys, thank you so much for watching, and until next time.